So Creature Commandos ended last week, and if you're not familiar, it was this 7-episode season of 25-minute animated episodes, all written by James Gunn, about this team of characters who are mostly monsters and creatures and stuff, like the name suggests. And it is the first official project in the DC universe, which is the brand new DC cinematic universe, or connected universe, or whatever you want to call it. But Creature Commandos, it was essentially the Suicide Squad again. It was a very similar version to that. And the whole DCU and this project is all being spearheaded by James Gunn himself. But this video isn't really going to be a review or a discussion on Creature Commandos, because I feel like everybody's made reviews or discussed the show as a whole. So I kind of wanted to do something different. And this video is about how I don't think that maybe this was the greatest start to the DCU, and why I don't think it was the greatest start. And I made a video similar to this back in March, where I said I was kind of worried about the DCU just based off of what we knew about the first projects. And now at the time we knew Creature Commandos was the first project, followed up by Superman, followed up by Peacemaker season 2. I know I didn't think this was the greatest first three projects, that while I'm excited for Superman, I don't think Peacemaker and Creature Commandos really complement Superman very well. And it's still the same now, where Creature Commandos is the first project, followed by Superman in July, followed by Peacemaker in probably August or sometime after Superman this year. And I guess this is going to kind of be a follow-up to that video in a sense, because after seeing all of Creature Commandos, my fears weren't put at ease. I still feel the exact same way I did before Creature Commandos came out, where I don't think that this is the greatest start to the DCU. I didn't watch this show feeling like this was a great first project, and I guess that's what this video will be about. But I guess to give brief feelings on the show as a whole, I thought it was fine. I actually thought some of the episodes were really good. The best part of every episode is the flashbacks to what brought the creature or the monster to where they are today. Every episode had a flashback sequence where we went through the past of one of the main characters and how they got to where they are. And I thought those were always the best parts of every episode. And usually if I loved an episode, it was because of the flashbacks. But maybe this isn't the best thing, because it meant that every single episode, I didn't care about the main storyline. I didn't care about the present day storyline. I felt like the main meat of every episode was the flashbacks, with the main present day storyline kind of just being there to give something to do in present day. And I don't know, if the entire show was just the main present day storyline with none of the flashbacks, I wouldn't have liked this show. It would have been one of the lesser DC projects from recent years, I feel like. But another issue with the show, in my opinion, is that Gunn has done this exact same style in every one of his projects so far. Guardians of the Galaxy, The Suicide Squad, Peacemaker. Take a bunch of outcast or obscure characters, make them become a sort of found family dynamic, and there's flashbacks sprinkled in between. And an issue with this is that I think Creature Commandos is easily the weakest of all of his projects. His Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, followed by the holiday special, The Suicide Squad, and Peacemaker Season 1, I all think are much, much, much stronger and superior projects to Creature Commandos. And it's not even just that Creature Commandos has less time, because the episodes are short, they're 20 to 25 minute animated episodes. There's only 7 of them. You add all of that up, it equals to just over the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie in runtime. And I think just from a character standpoint, everyone in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie alone is much stronger than anybody in Creature Commandos, or is just a more interesting character. And I don't know, I feel like for the DCU, this should have been something that we're if it's the first project, we should immediately be interested in every single one of these characters. We should immediately be seeing why this is the first project and why this is great. And I just didn't get that from any of the episodes, really, or from any of the characters. I kind of just found myself being I'm watching it because it's a new DC show, but as far as the DCU is concerned, it doesn't feel like there's much in this that's making me excited for the new universe we're going into. As the first project, this is something that should blow us away. We should be oh, this is amazing. This straight away sets up for the quality we can expect in the new DC universe. But instead, we're just left with something that's, pretty good, but expected. Not unique. It's an expected James Gunn project. It's the same as everything he's made so far, except Creature Commandos isn't even as good as the usual quality we can expect from James Gunn. And the animation style looks fine, but it's also nothing overly unique. It's not a style that stands out and makes us feel like this is the DC universe. The style of the animation just feels like the usual DC animated stuff with maybe a slightly higher budget. Now, I don't want to rag on the show too much because I do think it's a tad unfair, because my issue isn't really with the show itself, it's just with the placement of the show. If Creature Commandos came out 4 or 5 projects into the new DC universe, I probably wouldn't care as much as about everything I'm talking about here. I wouldn't be scrutinizing it as much as I am. But it's the problem is that it is the first project, which means there's a lot of eyes on it, and there's a lot of people like looking at it in the same vein as we'll be looking at like Superman or Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow as the first movies. If Creature Commandos was an animated show that came out, 2 or 3 years into the DCU, I don't think anybody would be talking about it as much or looking at it as much and talking about the quality of it as much. It would more so just been a fun DC project that came out, was a part of the wider universe, but you can watch it on its own. You can do whatever you want with it. But I guess to give a little bit of backstory on this stuff, James Gunn became the head of DC Studios along with Peter Safran in November of 2022, which is over a year after he released The Suicide Squad in July of 2021. And about 10 months after Peacemaker Season 1 started airing in January 2022. James Gunn pretty much instantly became DC's darling after The Suicide Squad. Even before The Suicide Squad came out, like before he started properly writing it, he was already DC's darling. They obviously coveted him after he was fired from Marvel due to his tweets before Guardians of the Galaxy 3 came out. But when he was brought in, DC were like straight away offering him anything. They were like, you can make a Superman film. James Gunn was the only person at the time that Warner Bros. Trusted with Superman as a character, or Warner Bros. Were willing to give Superman as a character to, because they just wanted James Gunn on their team. So they were like, offer him anything. He can make anything he wants. And understandably, James Gunn was like, I would like to make The Suicide Squad, because that is immediately a project you would associate with his style. Like the Suicide Squad as a characters, as an idea, as a group, doesn't make sense for James Gunn. So he made that, and similar to being offered Superman, he was told he can use any character he wants in the Suicide Squad. Like he's got the full sandbox of DC Comics and their 90-year history almost at this point, backlog of characters to dig into and take and use. Like I remember at one point he tweeted about the characters he considered using and didn't use, and it was like Deathstroke and Deadshot and Bane and a lot of these characters that are big, huge DC characters, but he opted towards more so going outside of Harley Quinn, a lot of more obscure, smaller C or D list characters, and then killing off some of the big ones like Captain Boomerang straight away in the film. But before Suicide Squad even came out, Warner and DC greenlit his Peacemaker project, and they were like, yeah, like, it's James Gunn, you can make whatever you want. Take Peacemaker, make a great show, go for it. And after Peacemaker Season 1 came out, Gunn started to become interested in the idea of doing an animated series based around a similar team to the Suicide Squad, which then he started reading up on Creature Commandos and became interested in that idea. So he wrote the entire 7-episode layout for the show and the scripts and all that before he even became head of DC Studios. And then in November of 2022, he got his promotion. He became the head of DC Studios. And one of the first things he did was greenlight his Creature Commandos project. Was like, okay, I'm pushing this to the front. This is the first thing we're going to make. This is the first thing we're going to release, which more power to him. He's the head of one of the most iconic movie studios and franchises in the world at the moment with DC Studios. Yeah, I mean, it's like a kid in a sweet shop. You have full reign. Like, of course you're going to do whatever the hell you want. If I was in charge of DC Studios, the amount of projects that nobody would want to see that I'd be like, I'd make a Catman project instantly. Thomas Blake is such a cool character. I want to make that. Those are the kind of things that I would straight away make. And nobody wants to see that stuff except for me. So I get James Gunn straight away being like, Creature Commandos is something I'm really passionate about. I really like this 7-episode thing I wrote. This is what we're going to make. And he should. It's his prerogative to do that. But my issue is just that it's the first project. Because this means that Creature Commandos was originally written as part of the DCEU, the other DC cinematic universe, the old DC cinematic universe. And it was repurposed once the new DCU started to take form so that the new scripts made sense and worked in the context of whatever James Gunn's new plan is or whatever his new DCU plan is. But this means that the very first DCU project is a repurposed DCEU project. It's repurposed scripts. It's an old idea taken and brought in. And that means that Out of the first 3 DCU projects, 2 of them are from the DCEU, because Peacemaker Season 2 is a similar situation where Season 1 was in the DCEU, Season 2 is going to be in the DCU, so they're making some changes there to make Season 2 work in the context of the DCU. But I don't know, I feel like if you're making a new, DC's, unfortunately, they're outside of their Batman stuff, they're not doing well in the eyes of the general public. I don't know how many times I've had conversations with people who are huge, Marvel fans and are like, oh, your DC movies, you're not great. You're not great in that. Your TV shows might be good, but your movies are never great. And this needs to change. This is something that James Gunn straight away needs to come in. He needs to prove why DC is a significant and important movie franchise. And he needs to straight away get the public on his side so that the DC movies start making money so that they can go on and be their own MCU or whatever. And I think you need to decide if, in a situation like this, is it more important to make projects that you're really passionate about and you really like yourself and that you think you're really good at? Or should you be pushing things like Superman and Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow and Lanterns and Batman Brave and the Bold and Paradise Lost, these projects that focus on the main DC heroes so that the general public can get excited for this and can understand why the main characters of DC are important and why we should be excited to see them. Now, Gunn said during his DCU announcements late in January of 2023 that Superman is the real first proper start to the DCU. That yes, Creature Commandos was coming out first, but Superman was the first actual project and the first real thing that they're considering, like the beginning of the DCU. And my kind of response to that is, if this is the case, then why isn't Superman coming out first? Why is Creature Commandos not coming out in like December of 2025 then, or in summer of 2025 after Superman has already released? At least, you change some things around. Peacemaker comes out in late 2025 and Creature Commandos comes out in mid 2025, with Superman coming out right before those 2 projects. Because Gunn also said that once Creature Commandos was out, we'd understand why it was the first project and why it was placed where it was. But I mean, after seeing the whole show, I don't understand. I couldn't really see anything that was like, oh, this makes sense why this is before Superman. I don't feel like anything would have changed by having seen Superman first, But another slight issue I have with their handling of this sort of stuff is that Creature Commandos also gave us our first in-universe look at multiple DC characters. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, the Teen Titans, a bunch of others first appear in the DCU in Creature Commandos, either through silhouettes and flashback scenes or through these nightmare-esque flash-forward, like hell apocalyptic visions showing all these heroes dead or covered in blood. And I feel like that is kind of a terrible way for you to first unveil these characters. I think our first look at these major characters should be in their films or in their projects in all of their glory, and not in weird dark silhouettes or covered in blood and tied to crosses, because that stuff immediately to me feels like what Zack Snyder was doing in the initial projects of the DCEU, which I thought the DCU was supposed to be different than that, because everyone was always complaining when Zack Snyder did that. And James Gunn, in my opinion, is sort of just doing the same thing now, where we're first seeing a lot of these big, huge, important characters in this. And look, I am extremely excited for Superman. I think it's hands down the most excited I've ever been for a new film. I'm going to be there opening day. Unless the film is the worst thing I've ever seen, I'm probably going to see it 5 to 10 times. I'm actually considering going to London for the day to see it, because the cinemas over there are going to be much better than the ones in Ireland. And that's how excited I am for this film. I want the DCU to succeed, and I need the DCU to succeed, because we have yet to see a proper DC universe in live action. What we have is the Arrowverse and the DCEU, which, as much as I love the Arrowverse, it was restrained by budget and by Warner Bros. Constantly telling them what characters they can and can't use. Like Wonder Woman and Aquaman were just hard-nosed for the entirety of the Arrowverse. Batman was a hard no, and then we tiny got like some little Bruce Wayne crumbs in Batwoman towards the end of the Arrowverse's run. And then Superman was very much held back. They were like, you can use him very, very, very briefly in Supergirl. You can have him for some crossovers briefly. And then he was just completely restrained until Superman and Lois started, which kept him away from all the other heroes by having Superman and Lois be on its own Earth. In the DCEU, we get 2 films that feature Superman and Batman together. In one of them, they're enemies for the whole film. And in the other one, Superman is dead for most of the film. Like, we have never seen Superman and Batman as world's finest and as a duo done properly in live action yet, which is insane. We've barely seen Wonder Woman done in live action. We need the DCU to be that definitive DC cinematic universe that shows us a lot of these characters together properly in all their glory for the first time. Because at the moment, the Arrowverse is the main DC live action universe in terms of the characters they use and the dynamics they set up. And even that was not able to use Batman, Wonder Woman, a lot of the main DC characters. And if the DCU doesn't immediately hit with an audience and immediately have success money-wise, Warner Bros. Aren't going to give it a chance. It doesn't matter what talent they have behind or in front of the camera. It doesn't matter how passionate the filmmakers are about the stuff. If these films and projects aren't immediately making money, then Warner Bros. Are just going to cancel the whole fucking thing. Because the unfortunate truth is that Warner Bros. Are leeching money at the moment. They've had money problems for a while. They're borderline broke completely. But even before they had money problems, we know that they are a very reactionary studio that will pull the plug on a franchise or a universe if it isn't straight away making money. And I guess part of me thinks that maybe Creature Commandos is not the best beginning to the DCU, because while this probably won't affect Superman from a money or viewership standpoint, I think James Gunn should maybe have more restraint in himself to say, okay, let's start with the big one. Let's have the big projects be at the very front. That's the first thing we show. That's the first thing we unveil in either film or TV. And then we bring in these other smaller projects that I'm really passionate about when we're a few years into the DC universe. You know, the first project should be something that straight away tells everyone what to expect from the DCU. But unfortunately, Creature Commandos is kind of just same old, same old. It feels like business as usual for DC. It feels like it could be a DCEU project and pretty much nothing would have changed. Like the flashbacks that had Batman in it, you could say that's Ben Affleck's Batman and nothing would have changed. Even the Gotham they showed felt like it could have just been the DCEU Gotham. So yeah, I feel like Creature Commandos should have slammed it home faster, quicker. It should have been the project to be like, this is what you can expect from DC now. But, you know, we've already had Peacemaker and the Suicide Squad in the DCEU, and Creature Commandos, in my opinion, couldn't even live up to them. Anyway, that's sort of my fear going into the rest of the DCU. Have any of you seen Creature Commandos? Did you really like it? Did you really hate it? Are you kind of just in the middle about it? Did you not watch it and you're not planning on watching it? How are you feeling about the DCU in general? Like, do you think that this was a good debut? Or am I right in some of my worries, or am I wrong? Or is this just a lot of, you know, calm down, wait and see sort of situations? But I mean, how many times have we seen DC trip over its own feet? I can't calm down because I've seen DC fail my entire life. And I want them to be better. I need them to be better. And it's hard not to notice the same patterns happening over and over and over again when you've been, you know, I don't know, 15 years, I'd say I've been sort of in the comic book circle now since I was like 11 or 12, like, you know, started going online, talking about the Arrowverse or Smallville in their early years. And you know, that led into the DCEU, where I was there throughout the whole thing, watching it constantly fail and wishing they could do something better. And it's hard not to see the DCU start on a similar note. And I want it to be better. Anyway, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. It's a huge help. If you're not new, a like and a share is always really good. Thank you so much for watching, and have an amazing day.